Well, alrighty, so we're only a couple of weeks away from the release of Superman, and at this point in time, the question out there is, should James Gunn be worried? Should James Gunn be very, very, very worried?
Yes.
Well, given the fact that this movie has a lot riding on it, a lot of money has been spent on this movie. According to a financier that spoke with Hollywood Reporter, it was revealed that the actual amount that was spent on this movie is over $363 million, according to this financier from behind the scenes of this movie. But James Gunn has come out to dispel all that and said no, the production budget for this movie is only $225 million. However, the one thing that he did not dispute is the fact that the marketing of this movie cost a lot of money. It has been heavily marketed. Over $200 million has been spent on the marketing of this movie, and it's very hard to dispute that because we've seen trailers after trailers, after clips after clips, after trailers after clips, after posters after posters, and so much marketing behind the scenes. James Gunn's face in some of the marketing plastered all over the place, and so on and so forth. And yes, it's hard to dispute that they've spent well over $400 million on this movie, which means by all accounts, in order for them to recoup their money back, they need to make at least $850 million if James Gunn's account, if it is by James Gunn's account. However, if it is by the financier's account, then they need to make well over $1 billion with this particular movie. So there's a lot riding on this movie, and at this particular point in time, once again, the question is, should James Gunn be worried? Well, I think so, if this deadline story is anything to go about, because last week we heard that the pre-ticket sales, they blew Fandango and blew Fantastic Four out of the waters, and Fandango portals will light up, right? Because they were projecting to us that the sales were about $125 to $145 million for the box office weekend, which is not overly great, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad because movies that have done that range in terms of superhero movies that we will compare to this movie, well, they went on to do about $800 million at the box office, which is not bad, which means they'll make their money back. Will they make a profit? Not really, but they'll make their money back. And I, for one, I want them to make their money back. I want this movie to do well. You want to know why I want this movie to do well? It's because if this movie do well, then it proves that it's not that people are having superhero fatigue is why movies are not doing well. It's because those movies were just terrible. They were bad, and the premises of those movies was because they were focused on agenda rather than actually giving us movies that will give us escapism. But it seems like James Gunn is really doing the best to actually give us some form of escapism with this movie, but he's trying to put his spin to it, and that might rub people off the wrong way. So let's dive right into this story. According to Deadline, Superman hits tracking with $90 million to $125 million for the US box office opening, which is not the worst news in the world. It's not a disastrous news. However, I think it's cause for worries. So I want to dive right into this article, share my opinion regarding why I feel like James Gunn really needs to be worried, and some of the things that he's doing that might be affecting the sales of this movie. Feel free to share your opinion in the comment section below, because I want to know what you think about this movie, and I want to get your thoughts regarding whether you think this movie is going to make any sales, if it's going to actually be successful, and if it's not going to be successful, tell me why you think the movie is not going to be successful. Any reason whatsoever, let me know in the comment section below. So let's dive right into this, ladies and gentlemen. Superman, the first movie under the new DC Studios headed by James Gunn and Peter Safran, arrived on tracking with $125 million to $145 million outlook on NRG. Now, some people are saying the books might be cooked because some people are actually showing photos of their own theaters with a lot of reserved seats, and those reserved seats, we don't know if they're counting for bookings or so on and so forth, and maybe that's why Fandango is lit up. And if that's the case, who's doing the reserving? Because you just see a whole bunch of seats inside of the photos that are just reserved. And so people are starting to get some kind of Captain Marvel vibes when Disney was allegedly cooked the books, right? People are starting to get that kind of vibe. So however, various distribution sources believe that the real range for the domestic opening of the Gunn-directed movie is more in the $90 to $145 million vicinity. Now, I'll tell you something. Even if it's between the $125 million to $145 million vicinity, in order for this movie to actually make what it's supposed to make, like $800 million, it's going to need a lot of legs. It's going to need a lot of word of mouth. It's going to need a lot of people going back to the movie to go and check it over and over and over again. But from what I've been hearing from the test screens and so on and so forth, people who have seen the movies and all the complaints about the CGIs and, Lex Luthor's voice and all this other stuff, yeah, I'm not too sure if people are going to go for seconds, but you never know. You never know. I'm going to see this movie and I'm seeing it with an open mind, and I'm hoping that this movie does pretty well. But how does this movie hold up when you're actually comparing it to other movies of such in terms of, people's first choice of movies that they want to see? The first choice is the movies that people choose that they want to see in July, and they've been, polled regarding this. And this is what the polls are now showing when you're comparing it to other movies that were released post-COVID. So in first choice, Superman is below such post-COVID superhero movies as Thor, Love and Thunder, $144.1 million opening, made over $800 million at the box office. A very terrible, horrible movie. Terribly horrible movie, made over $800 million at the box office. The Batman, good movie, really good movie. Love that movie. Made $134 million, and it made probably over $800 million at the box office as well. And James Gunn, Guardian of the Galaxy, made the same, $118 million, but made over $800 million at the box office, I think, or 750 or thereabouts, right? So all these movies, they did pretty well, which gives, James Gunn's Superman a little bit of hope. However, when it comes to those first choice, right, how does it compare or match with, movies like Captain America? Well, you have this first choice for this year's Captain America. Brave New World was higher than Superman by 71% at the same point in time, to the release of that movie. That movie opened at $88.8 million. So that would be good if that happens to Superman. In addition, Superman's first choice is 64% behind that of Matt Reeves' Batman in 2022. Now, they said, we already told you that Superman is this year's best advanced ticket seller in its first 24 hours with the peak Amazon Prime early access paid screening flying off Fandango's portals. Yeah, of course that will happen because a lot of people might have FOMO and might have just rushed in there with the announcement of get your ticket sales, very good what do I call it, trailer. It was a very good trailer. I mean, you might nitpick and complain about a few things, but overall it wasn't a bad trailer at all. So those screenings are on Wednesday, July the 8th, 3 days before the peak July 11 opening. Superman pre-sales outstripped that of Disney's Marvel Studio upcoming The Fantastic Four First Step, and it's so it should because that other movie has been destroyed with wokeness already. People are already sick and tired of the MCU, as it were. So it should. So there we are. It's not doing well in terms of first choice, but all of those things are all projections. It's really not, going to determine what's going to happen. However, James Gunn need to be really, really afraid because of certain reasons that I believe. The first thing is the heavy marketing. They're over marketing this movie. They're not leaving anything to guess, right? To guesswork. Because if you actually look at the original Man of Steel from 2013, most of the trailers that I saw, they didn't really reveal much, which gave people a lot of mystery. People wanted to see what this new Superman was going to be all about. However, this one, we now know he's a man-child. We now know that, he complains like a little bit weaker man, like low testosterone man, with the conversation that he had with what do you call her, Lois Lane, right? It didn't really put him in a good light at all. When you actually see that clip, people are also complaining about the CGI that is very, very much Flash-esque. And remember, James Gunn is one of the people that came out to say that the Flash was the greatest superhero movie he had ever seen, right? So yeah, that's giving people some doubts out here. So people are complaining about the CGI and also the goofiness of Superman, because it seems like they're actually trying to portray Superman as another man-child, pretty much like Peter Quill was like in Guardians of the Galaxy. So you're almost getting a Guardians of the Galaxy movie as well. However, one of the biggest problems that I think that this movie is going to have is that it doesn't really have household names. Now, a lot of people might disagree with me, but let's really look at the cast of this movie, right? Who knew David Corenswet before now? Like, tell me if you do know David Corenswet before now. What movies were he on that set the box office alight? Let me know. know. Rachel Brosnahan, who knew her? Who is she? Like, I don't know her, right? Nathan Fillion is one of that face you see in those movies, but not a lot of people know his name, right? Who knows Eddie Getehi, right? X-Men First Step, right? That's the only thing that you can really attribute to him. You might see him in one black movie here and there, or some movies, a couple of movies there, but these are not household name. They are really, really not household name. These are the movies that I listed out there. These are the movies that we talked about, like Thor: Love and Thunder. Thor: Love and Thunder had Natalie Portman. It had Christian Bale. It had what's his name? Chris Hemsworth. These are a household name. Robert Pattinson for Batman, household name. Jeremy Irons, household name. Right? So it had a lot of household names, and this movie doesn't. Even Guardians of the Galaxy, you have your Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Batista, you know, a lot of household names in that movie as well. So this movie has a really serious uphill battle, and at this point in time, I don't know if James Gunn is regretting not actually having Henry Cavill in there, because that would have been a big boost for this movie, you know, if he had actually kept the actual actors. Because what's the point of getting rid of Henry Cavill and then you're doing a story about Superman already in deep relationships with Lois Lane, when that Superman hadn't even started relationships with Lois Lane yet? So I don't get it. So it seems like that's another own goal on the path of James Gunn shooting himself in the foot once again. But these are my thoughts regarding this particular story. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think this movie is going to do pretty well at the box office, or are you just as confused as everybody else, not knowing whether it's going to do well or do badly? Or do you think it's going to do badly at the box office? Either or, this movie needs to make at least $800 million by any account to actually recoup their money back. And yeah, if it doesn't, James Gunn has nobody else to blame than himself. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, ding that bell for notification, and I'll catch you guys again real soon. Take care, peace, and Sire's out. Bye bye.